Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and hit that notification bell.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Guyanese Swag. My name is Key McKay. I am your host and we bring you interviews from leaders across the diaspora. Today we have with us a beauty influencer. She is a social media strategist and has worked with companies such as BET, MTV, and VH1. You know who she is, and if you haven't, you will definitely see her work because she is a producer who has produced multiple award-winning digital series such as Black Girl Beauty. Yes, I am talking about Sarita Nauth. How are you doing today?
Hi, Key. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Listen, I'm really excited about this conversation. I love what you've been doing, and I know that the people who don't know who you are, once they see this video, they're going to be in love with what you're doing as well.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. It's so important to me that I use my brand to elevate Guyanese led organizations because there aren't that many in our community. And I think that it's awesome that you have a platform to celebrate so many different people across our diaspora.
Absolutely. Before we get started, the first question I ask everyone is, what part of Guyana were you born?
Oh gosh, I was born in Georgetown, Guyana, right there in the center. I was born, not to age myself, 93. And I was born in Guyana, but I left when I was 3 years old. But when I moved to New York, it definitely felt like I was right back in Guyana, that's for sure.
Talk to us about the transition, leaving Guyana at 3 years old. When you left Guyana, did you guys go straight to New York, or where did you go after that?
So I actually, my family and we left Guyana at 3. My parents, like most Indo-Caribbean, most Caribbean parents want their kids to get a better education, grow, elevate. And my parents journeyed all the way to Belize, Central America. And that was a culture shock for me because we were on the side of Belize that I now know is not the only part of Belize. So I didn't really see people that looked like me and everybody in my family. We definitely looked brown. We looked Indian and Indian facing, but we didn't speak Spanish. I had a very hard time, fitting in. And I stayed there for about 5 or 6 years. And then we moved to New York. That was just mostly where we had family, and we knew that how we would have a community of people who looked like us, understood where we came from, and it sort of kind of felt like a return to home, but a more chance and better opportunity to grow. And my parents definitely thought it was a great decision, and I don't regret it.
While you were living in Belize, did you have a chance to learn the native language there?
Oh, I was so bad at Spanish. I think that how right when I got really good at it, I didn't, because my parents had Guyanese accents growing up, and we didn't really hear Spanish, growing up in Guyana. And again, because there weren't people who looked like us, we definitely gravitated more towards people who spoke English, and people who were Afro-Caribbean in Belize, but we never really got a chance to learn the language a lot. Un poquito más. That's really about it.
And then leaving Belize and going to New York. Obviously, those are really dynamic changes from Guyana to Belize, then to New York. I mean, in your experience, what was some of the hardest things that you experienced with all of those transitions?
Wow, I will say it was a culture shock because I didn't get a chance to really know my Guyanese culture outside of my home. So I would eat Guyanese food at home, go to school, and see and hear my classmates talk and live a different part of the culture that I never really fit in. So I struggled a lot with my identity. I struggled a lot with, what does it really mean to be Guyanese? Am I really Guyanese? Am I Guyanese enough? I didn't have an accent. I'm sure that if I try to do my Guyanese accent, I will get flamed on here. So I'm not going to even attempt. But moving all the way from Belize to New York, it was a culture shock because I said, wow, there are a lot of people here who look just like me, that have my hair type, that have my skin tone, that speak with the same accent and that my parents do. And it's the reason why places in New York like Little Guyana feels like home to so many people in our community, because this is where a lot of our people come to feel like they're at home, but also, again, have that opportunity to sort of expand and spread their wings.
As a kid growing up, what was it about not being surrounded by people who look like you, talk like you, that sound like you, that now as an adult, you're looking back and you're going, well, these are the things that kind of helped shape me to be a better person, but then some of it also made me question who I am as a person, who I am as a human being, who I am even as Guyanese?
Wow, actually, It's very interesting that I struggled a lot with my identity growing up because I didn't really know who I was, how I came off and how I represented felt like I was honestly a different person in every single walk of my life. I didn't really know where I fit in. I was it was actually very funny. And hopefully I'll find a photo for you to share. I was always the smallest and darkest, skinniest, and because I'm 5 foot tall, so I'm shortest in my class. And so they always put me in the front because there weren't that many people who are Afro-Caribbean in that part of Corozal Town and Belize. So I was always spotlighted. And I would always remember Sarita, Sarita, Sarita would always be said. But the only thing that kind of tethered me to the more Spanish culture of Belize is that my name Sarita is Sarita in like Belizean and like Spanish like dialect. So the name was very much allowed for me to connect with the culture of the people, but how I looked and how I came across and also how I spoke, I definitely struggled with my eloquency and my vocabulary growing up. And it did not help when I moved here to this country that I didn't really, again, know how to fit in and how to present myself. So I didn't really know how to celebrate my people and my identity as a Guyanese woman when I came to New York at such a young age. I went to school with Guyanese people, but their experience, may they have been born in Guyana or born over in America, was stark. It was definitely interesting to find myself at a young age, but I'm grateful that at now almost 30, now at 30, I've been able to accept who I am and kind of return back to home and know that how being Guyanese didn't have to be one sort of thing that I had to figure out. Being Guyanese can be so many things. So it allowed for me to embrace every side of Sarita as I got older.
Talk to us about who Sarita is today. Obviously, you've done amazing things. You've been accomplishing amazing things, but talk to us about Sarita today and the person that you are.
Wow. To say that we are always the same type of person at every single walk of life is not really a true statement, because we're always growing, we're always evolving, we're always truly, discovering ourselves. And as of late, I've learned how to step back and really sit and notice how the things of my childhood has shaped who I am growing up. My relationship with my parents, my relationship with my family, but most importantly, the relationship I have with myself. How do I show up for myself? How do I represent myself? How do I use the tools around me to say, is this helping me? Is this really working out for the betterment of Sarita? So this is a question that I often ask myself every single day, that there is a new version of myself. And I wouldn't say a new version, the version of who I always knew I was destined to be is there within me. And a lot of times in our culture, we kind of shy away from that because when we're always taught to be a certain thing and raised to not be as expressive because children should be seen and not heard. So luckily, I grew up in a family where being expressive and being artistic was celebrated a little bit more. So it allowed for me to spread my wings and really evolve like a butterfly every single step of the way. And I think that that's an opportunity too. And that's something that I like to encourage in my mentorship to young Guyanese women and young Caribbean women always is who you were yesterday and who you are today and who you will be aren't always going to be the same person, but at least you have an anchor and a ground within yourself, and that awareness that you see within what you know you want to do. Once you have that and once you embrace that, you can do anything.
Wow. How did that help you how did that shape you to be the person that you are today in terms of now looking at, we live here in America where on magazines and in TV ads, like now it's starting to become a thing where diversity and inclusion is a part of the conversation. But it was a point in time where you didn't see girls who look like us on a magazine or in a TV ad, and definitely not doing makeup and skincare and all these amazing things that you're working in. How do you feel like being in a family that allowed you to be expressive creatively made you comfortable to say, hey, I want to pursue getting into media. I want to pursue getting into entertainment. I want to pursue being a beauty influencer?
Wow, that is that question comes with many different parts. So the first part that I want to touch on too is I am grateful that my parents, I'm the baby of the family, so my sisters got that all out of the way. So I was able to kind of not really be a little bit of the underdog, where my parents said, okay, she got good grades, but what else is she doing? So when I came to America, very quickly after, I grew a love for the arts from my older sister, photography, videography. That was my first love at like 14, 15 years old. And it was very interesting because my grandmother was a seamstress in Guyana, and I love her so much, God rest her soul. Knowing that how I would not be able to return to Guyana for a very long time in my life, that I would want to make her proud because she's a seamstress. So in honor of my grandmother, I went to the High School of Fashion Industries and studied fashion design for 4 years. Then I went on to do fashion merchandise management for 2 years in college at FIT in New York, and then also progressed to advertising, marketing, communications that allowed for me to embrace my passion for fashion, essentially, and then apply it to a skill set in media entertainment, and then also progress into television. And I think a great example of that is using that skill set and my culture and identity for my. So when I was working on America's Next Top Model, but also remembered when I was 13 years old, watching the show, there weren't that many girls who looked like me. And if there were one or two, they looked more Indian or South Asian. So then that also changed my perspective of how beauty is seen across media entertainment and in magazines. And I will always say that my first producer, love, creative sort of director role creating VH1's Black Girl Beauty was really a love letter and an homage to Black women who have always been the pioneer for women of color across every diaspora. So there are Afro-Caribbean women, there are women who look like you, there are women who look like me, who got the representatives who basically said, hey, Sephora, you need to start carrying our skin tone, you need to do this, you need to do that. Black women being the pioneers for women of color overall allowed for people to say, I'm Black or I'm Indo-Caribbean, or I am Guyanese, I'm Jamaican, there's so many different parts, because for people who actually come to the Caribbean, Jamaicans don't look like how they're conventionally portrayed on television. Guyanese people don't look how they're very, very smallly represented on television. If they are, it's Canadian Guyanese, it is British Guyanese, and there is a very, very small existing population of Indo-Caribbean and West Indian women in both beauty and entertainment. So that's where I try to use my leverage and my power and my voice to say, we're here. There are women who look like me. There are women with hair types like mine. There's women with skin tones like mine. There's women who have a large nose and fuller lips and more curvaceous body, because those are the girls that I grew up with. Those are the women who are part of my family. So if I can go out there and represent them, then I know that I'm showing up for women across my culture and community.
I find that there is two different stories that are told about media. There's this one side of the narrative where it's like, these people are evil and they just don't want to represent us. And then there's the other side of the story where it's like, they're just ignorant and they just don't know. In your experience working in the industry, what do you find to be the narrative of what's really happening in terms of why there was such a large time span where we weren't represented, where beauty products didn't fit our skin tone, where there was no option for us in the market, and it was either you buy the blush that was way too light for your complexion, or you just don't use it at all?
Yeah, I will say, being in entertainment and media for almost a decade and being in those meetings and those conversations behind closed doors, I will say this is exactly the reason why I made it a goal of mine to let people know that I am a Guyanese woman, and I'm proud of that. Because if I don't say that, people will make assumptions about my race and my identity. I cannot hide who I am. I cannot hide how my parents look. I cannot hide the culture and ancestry that has brought me to where I'm at. I would be disappointing every single one of my family members and the women who fought, during indentured servitude, to be visible, to be individual outside of the men that they escaped from India. That is part of who I am. And that strength and that resilience made me realize that behind closed doors, it's really because representation, especially for Guyanese people, has always been coded with Black Guyanese, like Afro-Caribbean. And we know that culturally and also historically, there has been that divide within our people. But in actuality, we help bridge that gap between our people, because we can still say, let's go get, a shot of rum and some cheese roll and like turn this shit up and do what we have to do, because at the end of the day, we're just proud to be Guyanese. So with that being said, we often see our culture represented in a very polished way, in a way that we see is marketable, like Carnival with a Rihanna or Nicki Minaj sort of face-in figure. But then we know that there's so much depth to our culture and history to our people that isn't really seen and heard behind closed doors. So this is also exactly the reason why VH1's Heritage Month group chats came to be. So with that, I noticed for a while we had a VH1 Caribbean sort of channel, like Twitter account. And I noticed that people were tweeting about our shows. And when Spice, the queen of dance hall, joined Love and Hip Hop, everyone went crazy. And everything I posted about her got so much traction. So I worked with the people on my team who was also Caribbean to create something very specific for that. And that was very interesting and cool for me, because although I'm not Jamaican, I was able to say, but this is, we all, get along with one another to some degree. Like, we all celebrate one another. It's a part of being Caribbean. So when I started to expand that, I realized there is actually an audience here, and our people are not being met, because we do show up. We show up in masses for Mass, for Juve, for Carnival. And yet for some reason, we can make those things move, but where are we represented in mainstream media? That then had me realize that there is an audience of Caribbean people that are not seen or represented. So I started creating that content. I started working with Spice Moore and Carly Red, who's of Trinidadian roots, to basically say, how do I put our culture, our food, our history, our heritage, our fashion, our beauty on the map, so that way I know that they're not being heard. Now, was this done on a global scale? No, but it's a start. And I will say that it's one of my most proudest work to date, because it let me know that at the end of the day, I would have never been able to really discover who I am as a person if I wasn't showing up for the people within my community.
How much of the not showing up has to do with us ourselves, not preparing ourselves to show up, and not, when those opportunities present themselves, being bold or being courageous enough to say, you know what, I'm going to apply for this job. I'm going to show up. And even if they tell me no, at least I attempted.
Well, I think that has to do with something we haven't touched on yet, which is, and you mentioned it before, which is growing up and how our households are usually traditionally are. And especially if you're someone watching this and you're like, well, I'm Caribbean or I'm Guyanese and I grew up in America. I grew up in Queens. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. I grew up in Brampton, in Canada or whatever. Every single Guyanese household, there are still there are many Guyanese households that still have strokes of very traditional upbringing, especially for Caribbean and Guyanese women. And we have always been told a certain narrative that sometimes it's like, you go to school, you get your education, you get a good job, but ultimately by a certain age, you should be married, you should have a husband and kids and so on and so forth. That is not the case anymore. And it shouldn't be. And we watch those people who are creative have their dreams suppressed on both sides because they're not able to spread their wings. They're not encouraged and feel supported to go off and chase their dreams. I am sure there is someone watching this right now that has put aside their dreams to make someone in their family happy and never make themselves happy and never say, maybe I should have opened up something, a bakery, that is inspired by my culture, or maybe I should have just gone on to be an artist, or maybe I should have gone off to do XYZ, but there are certain roles and occupations that were never encouraged that would make money. And that was one of the things too, that I'm glad that no one in my family told my parents, oh, don't let Sarita go off and do entertainment because there's no money there. She should be a doctor, a lawyer, or anything. I'm not cut out to be a doctor. I'm going to keep it real. All right. But there are many people in our community. There's many Guyanese women who are amazing nurses, doctors, engineers, Guyanese women in tech. The amount of Guyanese women in Guyana right now that are so brilliant and are not motivated on a way that you can go to school and get your books, and do your schoolwork, but how are they being supported mentally? How are they encouraged when they go home? What is a household environment that they're going to that will ultimately affect how well they do in these careers and professions? So I will say that how having a culture and having a community within your household and around you is the reason why we see a lot more Guyanese people and Caribbean and West Indian women being more independent and breaking those cultural norms to say, I'm 30 years old, I'm not married, I don't have kids right now, but at least I can say that how I have been on a national, platform and speaking my truth about my culture, my identity. I can say that I've spoken in front of CEOs and, people who are, Fortune 500 leaders. This is something that I know is an accomplishment. And I think that what often hinders our women and people in our community is that we are taught to think that those are not accomplishments on their own. And there's just a lot. There's so much I can go on.
No, oh, listen, my light bulbs are going off and I am so in love with everything you're saying right now. Because first of all, to the parent watching this, to the individual watching this, whether it's a teenager or a parent themselves, talking about growing up, because as you mentioned, there's still this traditional upbringing that's happening, whereas in the household, it's fine, but outside of the household, the world that traditional household once supported no longer exists. And it's like, you have to evolve with the world around you. And if you're not being raised to evolve in the world around you, when you turn 18 or 16 or whatever, and you leave your parents' house, you're then pushed into a world that you're not equipped to survive in. You're not equipped to manage or to navigate. So then you get into this place where either you're going to crumble or you're going to succeed. And so for the parent who's watching this and they might have been raised traditionally, or maybe they didn't even have their parents at all, and they're doing this parenting and they're trying to equip their child for this generation, for the next generation, how can they better raise that child to say, hey, I didn't grow up this way and I don't know how to support the dreams that you have, because truthfully, I didn't even have the opportunity to think about my dreams. Like thinking about my dreams wasn't even an option. How can they support their children to evolve into the world we're living in now?
Wow. I think it's beautiful because there are many, many parents who have that perspective and realizing that what I've been doing for X amount of years has not been helping my kid connect better with me, show up better for themselves, feel motivated to want to hang out with our family, and not try to use our culture or use what they're currently doing as an escapism from our culture. That's what I did for years. I am so willing to admit it. My parents are not traditional Guyanese parents, but they're as Guyanese as they come, right? And I think that it's so interesting that there is a generation of people, and even some of the girls that I mentor who weren't even born in Guyana, that use places like Liberty Avenue and Little Guyana as a place of escapism because they feel seen. But when they actually sit in it, they also have to deal with the reality of, do my parents, I'm being judged if I'm in the LGBTQIA community. I'm being judged if I am doing an occupation that is not traditional from, the people who are older and around me. We're always taught to respect our elders, but it starts to come to a point where our elders are no longer respecting us. And for the people in our community and the parents around us who want to show up for their children, and even though they know that how it might be too late for me to go to therapy, it might be too late for these things to happen, it is never too late for you to say, I messed up. Yelling at you was not a conducive way to help you grow. Speaking at you instead of with you is not helpful. It doesn't mean that you lose that sort of, strong arm that we know that how our Caribbean parents, we thank them for later on in life because it's made us sharper. No, we're grateful for that. I'm grateful that my parents have taught me to be strong, independent, not reliant on a man, and actually be able to say, wow, she can accomplish everything she has. And even if she gets something, if it goes away, at least she knows that she's built and knows who she is. And I think that part of encouraging our young Guyanese children, if you are a parent or someone who takes care of younger children, let them know that although you might not have gotten help, it's a healing journey for them to also come down to that level, and instead of speak above them and feel dominant, that they can say, let's do something today. Let's do something different. It's also the reason why I've actually been trained to be an equestrian, a sport that is not something encouraged or elevated by our people. I honestly have no real understanding how it came to me, but it is my favorite thing to do at least 1 to 2 times a week, where I am proud that I can say that I did something different for myself. And if I ultimately get really good at it, I know that I can encourage young Guyanese women to do something different. It might not be that sport, but it could be something else, because I realize that how we're always taught to reflect what our families do. And I think that there's a generation of us that is saying, especially our women, we no longer want to do these things. We no longer want to be homemakers. As much as we love our mothers and love what they've done for us, we also see how it degrades their mental health. We also see where they suffer. We also see where a lot of Caribbean women and men have suffered for that. The suicide rates in our community are so horrendous. And it breaks my heart, because who is to say that one time that someone picked up the phone, or that one time that person felt like they were being heard, or given a space where they weren't shut down and told to be seen and not heard. That is a narrative that needs to change within our community. It doesn't mean that you go to therapy every day. You can go to therapy every single day. You can tell your parents, go get therapy. But are they doing the work? Do they want to change? And oftentimes, that generation doesn't want to change. They feel like it's too old. They feel like it's too late. They feel like they missed the mark. And I think that how it's time that how we have to learn how to heal within ourselves and love them and accept them, and also know that how whatever you say to me, may that be like you cut me off or I'm disowned from the family, at least I know I walked away with my head held high, and my own kids won't have to suffer generational trauma. And we see that happening a lot more in our community.
Oh my God. Can I just tell you, first of all, I love your brain. I love everything you're saying, but the depth of what you're saying and how you're saying it, for the person who has said, you know what, my parents did this and my parents are not willing to change. They are who they are, and they've made it clear they have no interest in changing or evolving. This is what they know, this is what they want to stick to, but I don't want to repeat the mistakes they made. How can that person evolve, but at the same time, because there's this thing where it's like, I want to evolve, and I realize that they're not willing to change, but I don't want to cut my family off. I still want to be connected, but I don't want this being passed down. Like, there's this whole complexity of that. If I don't want to pass that down to my children, but at the same time, I realize that they're not going to change, but I don't want to cut them off. How does a person deal with that?
Wow. To navigate that is very tricky. And it's not to say that every family is the same. There are so many taboo topics in our community that are not really met. And so much like most families across the world, there's always something that happens behind closed doors that we're not aware of. And for anybody watching it, they know what I'm talking about. They know that there is that thing that pain, that hurt, however it comes out verbally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that makes them feel like, I grew up having to go to church, may it be a Christian church, a Hindu church, and if I were not to do this anymore, my parents or the person I go with, who is my elder, is going to think of me differently. I've had friends who are young Guyanese women move halfway across the world to London and pursue their dreams. I had friends who basically moved out of their parents' house and said, I am going to live on my own, and I don't care if you think that I'm going to struggle. Did you also not struggle? Did you also not come to this country with literally less money that I probably am making right now? And I think that oftentimes those people want to protect us, but we have to remember, in order to break the chains, there must be that pressure, that resilience, that determination. But it also doesn't mean that you hurt the person that it is attached to. You are just breaking yourself free from that part of the connection. And I think that it comes with also time It comes with saying if you want to live on your own, or you say, well, I'm seeing the men in my community being praised and idealized for these very, very common tropes, like they're allowed to have children out of wedlock, they're allowed to be seen a certain way. But it's not to say that how they also don't have those societal pressures and that mental health, their mental health is also on the table. This is a very difficult topic for many people to talk about. It's something that we don't often hear because everyone wants to tiptoe around it. Personally speaking, if you have the means, if you have the determination, is your mental health and your spirit of who you are, if that is going to cost you a relationship with the person that's causing it, you are only going to perpetuate it. You have to break the cycle, however you deem that to be. May it be going to a school for a different thing that your parents didn't want you to, or going off and finding your own space. If it means you have to struggle, then you're also letting them know in a soft and gentle way, which will probably not be received well, but eventually they will understand that I watched you struggle and because we know this, there are many people in our community who didn't have to struggle, and that's amazing, but a majority of our people have had to. And if you as a younger person can tell that person, I've struggled, I've watched you struggle our whole entire life, I am doing this because I no longer want that for you, for me, and for whoever to come.
Wow. On that note, we're going to take a break for a message from today's sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Meet Jenny. While strolling through her Instagram feed trying to find something to do this weekend, she saw a post from Guyanese Swag advertising a concert happening in her local area this weekend. Excited, she clicked on the link, which redirected her to the comprehensive Guyanese Swag business directory. To her delight, Jenny discovered a variety of upcoming Guyanese events taking place in her city. What is really cool about it is the directory gives her all the details she needs. She gets to see business profiles with pictures, videos, and even special offers. Plus, she can easily find contact information and read reviews from people who have attended previous events hosted by the same promoter. Now, Jenny visits GuyaneseSwag.net on a weekly basis. It is her go-to website for finding things to do on the weekend. If you are an event planner or promoter and want to reach a ton of people in the Guyanese community, visit GuyaneseSwag.net. We've got a huge membership base across the diaspora, and it's the perfect platform to get the word out. So why not give your event the exposure it deserves? Just visit GuyaneseSwag.net. It takes less than 5 minutes to list your event.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Guyanese Swag. We're here today with Sarita Nauth. Listen, if you guys missed the first half of this interview, I highly encourage you to go back and watch it. Sarita, for the person who's watching this and they're wondering, okay, she's beauty influencer, she's in digital marketing, she's worked with these really amazing companies, and she's doing even greater things. I want to follow in her footsteps. What were some of the things that you did early on to prepare you for roles like working with BT, VH1, and all the other amazing companies that you're working with?
Yeah, everyone has their own path. Everyone has their own journey. And I can promise you that that little Sarita that we talked about earlier, it took many, many years to heal her and for her to figure out who she is, that will then create the next wave and generation of amazing things that I know is to come my way. But going all the way back, I think that when I came to this country, I really saw that I could take the path that many people in my community have taken, but I also said, I'm going to pursue my passions, however that might look. So what I did was, at a very young age, about 14 or 15 years old, I worked with people in my school. I have so many amazing mentors and teachers who I aligned myself with to say, I really want to learn how to take photos. Okay, so they helped me find internships to do with reputable companies that allowed for me to do this. And I'm fortunate enough that my parents allowed me to go off and venture on my own. I spent many, many years, going to celebrity events and working with mentors who put me in the rooms that allowed for me to be visible. Did they know I was Guyanese? No. which is also, I would feel like, looking back in my career, I could have started this journey a lot earlier. But I will say that how everything happens for a reason, and it's starting now because I know that how it's going to inspire even more of what I continue to do. But early on in my career, I threw myself into my work. I threw myself into that sort of hustler mentality that our people so inherently have. I will always credit my father for my work ethic. I will always say that how seeing my father work multiple jobs, my mother to raise a whole entire household, seeing so many people around me basically not prioritize their mental health just so that way we can survive. I said, I have come to terms and accept the fact that I will have to struggle. But when I struggle, I know that it's going to help me grow. It's going to make me into a diamond. It's going to make me into something that can also help other people. And I think that that was my biggest goal, is that how this is all going to be worth it. I've worked on amazing award-winning, strategies for shows that I grew up watching. And it's because my mom was always had the TV on, watching People and Entertainment, reading People magazine and watching Entertainment Weekly and these red carpet events. And I would go to school and do fashion shows and, cover the Met Gala. And then almost, a few months ago, working the Met Gala myself as a young Caribbean girl, and probably maybe the only Indo-Caribbean person on the press that day, let me know that how when someone says, oh my God, I want to be just like her, it's because they know that how I was there and I was in the right room. So that's when I basically said that how even if you are someone who is trying to venture off in a career that is not usually celebrated by our families, you are going to be one of one in that area. And while it might feel like a lonely journey, I can promise you that the end result will be worth it.
You talked about community and having mentors and people who reflected where you want to go, that they can point you in that room. For the person who's watching this, and in our culture, there's this thing where we grow up, and as you said earlier, you should be seen and not heard. There's that timidity that sometimes follow you all your life, where it's like, even when you're in the room, you feel this pressure to suppress what you want to say, or suppress how you say it, or not say it a certain way because everybody else in the room don't say it that way. There's that temptation to suppress who you really are. When you're in that room, or you're in any room, how do you be authentic to yourself, but then at the same time meet the requirements of what's in the room?
Wow. It's so interesting because I've met many young Guyanese women who have asked me that same question, that they come off as small and meek and quiet because they are often told not to speak up. And yet our culture is so loud and proud and unapologetic. And I can see how that push and pull struggle is there, because you're expecting, oh, why this gal just sitting down there and she's so quiet, or this guy, all he want to do is be on the computer and all this stuff. If they understand that how this is just those children, those young people regressing because they have always been told, and know that if they're loud and proud, they get told they're loud, and shamed for that, it doesn't create a good environment. And I've always been told my entire life, Sarita, you're too loud. You're too loud. And I'm like, I don't care if you think that I'm too loud. At least I know that my voice is going to be heard, and I'm not going to let what I've worked so hard for, this person, this identity of who I am, shine as bright as I possibly can. And I think that how it feels like it's almost fake. It feels almost as if when your family or whomever, because that is such a big part of our culture, goes out there and represents you, think about how many times, even a lot of Guyanese girls hide who they really are when they're out with their friends to when they're with their families. There's so much duality there, and it makes them feel like they can never really truly be themselves. So how do I be that person that meets other people's needs and also meet my own needs? And it's trying to find a common ground in the middle, because unfortunately, I am not responsible and do not want to be responsible for a wave and generation of young Guyanese people basically saying, we can't do this no more, and then leave the house and do all this stuff. No, there are people who are in the household helping their parents, that are working so hard because they love their families so much. But we don't talk about it so often, that it drills it into the minds of our young generation to say that how you are just as important and should not carry the burden and the weight of your family. You should not feel that you are responsible and the head of the household, but when you have to speak up, this gal is just a child. It's like I the children and you's a parent. And we've heard that a lot. I've heard that in my life too. This generation of young children nowadays, they think that they'd grown up. They think, and you're like 30, 40 years old. And it's like you still are treated that way even on old age. And then even think about it, a lot of times with young Guyanese women, because we don't talk about it enough, sometimes they're often made to feel that how they don't have a voice unless they have a partner. And even then, there are people in our community who are in the LGBTQIA community who often balance those two different voices and those gender stereotypes. So when they face that, they also come into an additional layer of strain on their mental health and self-identity. So while I'm not a psychologist or a licensed therapist, I'm somebody who just cares about the future of our people and care about it in a way that I want to help as many people as I possibly can by letting them know that how you can let go of the reins and probably take that risk, take that jump. It doesn't mean cuss out your parents tomorrow. It also just means that how there's a lot of inner work that you unfortunately have to do and bear, but it will be worth it, because do you really want to spend your entire life and be like the people in our families and our generations who sit and hold grudges and ponder upon things that they can no longer change? And that this has nothing to do with religion, school, and education. It does probably have to do with social, economic, geographical upbringing. But I will absolutely say that, and gender norms, but I will absolutely say that how this has nothing to do with other than building a great relationship with yourself.
Wow, you talked extensively about inner work and self-development. What, in your opinion, and I know that for every person this is going to look differently, but what were some of the things that you've done and continue to do personally to develop yourself as an individual person that you feel like has contributed to the person that you've become today?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, because it's something that I'm always constantly evolving. And I think that a lot of times in our community and in our culture, there's not something that we learn which is called being still, being at peace, being quiet. And I think that oftentimes when people like myself tries to find that anchor of peace, we're not encouraged to just go to the park, go hike, do these things that are traditionally American activities, or go to therapy or find mental tranquility. Oftentimes it's either based in the things I mentioned before, religion, community, so on and so forth. A lot of times it's very hard to show up for yourself if you are not disciplined with your routines. How can you be disciplined with your routines if you are working and overworking and burning yourself out, because that's the only way your parents taught you how to make a living in this world? Burn yourself out, push your mental health to the side, and never truly be able to discover who you are. I am beyond grateful that even with the struggles that I've had of being an immigrant daughter in this country, that how it's taken me almost 30 years to understand what it means to be still, to be present. And even right now, whenever this airs, on this very day, I'm about to go and enjoy my day off with my young Guyanese and Trinidadian cousin, who I love her so much and want the best for her. And we're going to go meditate, and we're going to go and do some journaling exercises in the park, because it's the simple things and showing up for the people in your life that means a lot, that will also heal you. A lot of times in our culture, we're taught that drink your problems away because they're just going to be there. There's no real solution for it. Every problem has a solution. A lot of times we don't like what that solution is. So I think that how by creating discipline within ourselves and our community, by holding people accountable to say, I don't want to deal with this today. I need a mental health break. And all you're going to hear is some teeth sucking and what wrong with this body, this gal. Oh, all they want to do is meditate and all this stuff. Who do they think they is, Lord Shiva? No, that is not the way that we are, trying to do better by ourselves. We have to ignore the noise, and we have to say, in order to be the best version of myself, I have to learn how to sit with myself and come to terms with everything that's been thrown at me, accept them and release them. And I think, again, that has nothing to do with whatever you believe. It comes with that the best relationship you can have in this world, and it's the one with yourself. We're often always told, you're born alone in this world, you're going to die alone. Okay, so then let me learn how to live with myself.
Wow, that's really profound. As immigrants and children of immigrants, there's this complexity that we struggle with when we come to this country, whereas we come here, we watch our parents who, as adults, basically have to go back to the mind of a child, because now they have to learn a new culture, new environment. Everything is brand new for them, as it is for us. The difference is we get to go to school and learn how to navigate the systems, learn how to grow up and become a part of this society. They don't. They get, in a way, thrown into it, and they got to figure it out while raising children, while being an adult, while even trying to figure out who they are in this new environment. And to your point, a lot of them just throw themselves into work, and they don't really get acclimated with, hey, there's other options. They just work and work and work and work because that's all they know. And then for us, the next generation, then we're torn between, well, now I have to be responsible for the parents. And many of us grow up older, than we grow up faster than really we should have, because now we're taking on family responsibilities and helping contribute to the household, helping, sometimes even having to become parents to our parents at young ages, or becoming parents to our siblings while we are still children and trying to figure out, how do we even be a child? And then there's just so many different complexities that go into all of that. For the person who's experiencing that, for the child who they're now coming from Guyana and their parents are going through this or they're going through that, what are some words of encouragement that you would give to them, but then also some practical steps that they can take to acclimate themselves better?
I will say to that young person that you are not alone. This journey that you're about to embark on, you are not alone. And although you have to learn how to live with yourself and deal with all of these projections that are being thrown onto you, you are not solely responsible for breaking generational traumas and curses in your family. That is not your sole responsibility. And what I will say to them is that take it every day at a time. While our parents and our elders might live in the past, you do not have to. You do not have to take your past, bring it into your present, and project it out to your future. What you can do is live in the moment and know that how I am grateful for everything that I have around me. And even for the things that I lack, I am grateful for it. Gratitude will send that signal out to everything around you, that never mind everything feels like it's pressuring and caving in and people will spout all of their projections onto you. It is not easy to do it all at once. So it sounds easy as I'm saying it because I've had to go through it. But I remember a time where I completely shut down and I wasn't able to do those things. But I think that reading books or finding something that allows for you to express yourself, maybe it's videos, games, maybe it's art, maybe it is, doing a sport or activity. I think about how my older sister is doing an amazing job raising 2 young Guyanese children that are doing different and complex things, that are so well educated, but also are able to have a nice balance of sport and activity and a social life. I think that try not to often seem that it is a form of escapism, and look at it from a way of, I am trying to pour into myself because I can't pour from an empty cup. So I have to do for myself. It does not mean that I, there are many times that these young kids don't have a car, they don't have access to good things around them in their neighborhood or their culture or community. But that's the reason why schools are so important. That's the reason why after school activities are so important. That's the reason why that how I tell our generation, our older generation of Guyanese parents and people, do better for the young people around you. You can't tell them, I don't know where she got all she bad habits from, when you're also drinking, smoking, vaping, because that is a form of escapism for you. And I think that the vices in our community have set our people back here and doesn't allow for us to be well represented in media and entertainment, because nobody can really know who our people are except for a veil of our culture and community. Guyana has carnival, but do you see that represented in media? No. We see that in Barbados. We see that in Jamaica. We see that in St. Lucia. We see that everywhere. We see carnival here. We see it on the Parkway in New York. But for our people, it starts, and it's so much work. Not one person can cure all the years of generational trauma out there. It requires a community. It requires saying that just because it was hard all of this time, right, we can do a better job in showing up. So that way you don't have to lose your children. You don't have to lose the people around you who are going to help take care of you. You do not have to have children so that way you raise them to be your caretakers. That is something that I see so often in our community, when I see it around my peers and my friends and my family, that they're not able to do the simple things that I have advised of them because they feel that overwhelming pressure. Every situation is different. So I cannot say that how there's one formula for everything, but I will say that how the actual thought and the idea and the determination to want change and want better is a two-party, endeavor. And who's to say that how if you start making those habits and those changes and knowing that how, yes, this yelling, this screaming, this pressure, this everything is very much weighing on me, but I understand that it is a projection of my parents. It's not to say that how, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be out drinking, smoking, doing all this stuff every single weekend. No, like maybe that shouldn't be a good thing. Because I'm not saying that I didn't have a social life, but my social life did have to take a back burner in order to make who Sarita Nauth is today. That is the ultimate truth.
Wow. For the person watching this and they're stuck between that balance, which you so eloquently talked about, where there's this past of what your parents did, and then there's this person who you're trying to become, but nothing around you reflects the person that you're trying to become. Nothing around you even supports that person. And when you say something like, I want to be a beauty influencer, or I don't want to be a lawyer, like that's not even attractive to me. I don't want to be a doctor. Instead, I want to become a video game engineer. It's like, you can't make money doing that. That's not a real job, because they hadn't seen it done before. For the person who's trying to evolve to something that they don't see around them and they don't know how to be, how can they take steps, or what action steps should they be taking to position themselves in a role where they can become the person that they're trying to be, even though they don't see it represented?
I'm smiling because it's all about perspective shift, right? And it's not to say to pull the wool over your parents' eyes, or it's not to say that how our parents are not smart people, even if their college education, is different and varies, right? Or the education in general. But I'm smiling because I was told the same thing about being a beauty influencer. I was told, why do you have all this makeup and everything like that? And is it really getting you to where you need to be? And I think that how so often our dreams are being told to put on a back burner because we're told that how if you try and you fail, that it is not part of your experience. Even if you try something, and say if you want to become a video game engineer and you failed at it, at least you tried. At least you know that you put your best in it. And I think that the best thing that you want that person that you're telling, maybe your parents or loved ones, you want them to encourage you. But I will also say you can shift a perspective by saying then, well, I'm going to be the best damn Afro or Indo-Caribbean first ever video game engineer for, this active entertainment, interactive entertainment company. That's it. And I think that how being the first is always something that is enticing to present it. I think that how it's almost a form of, psychology to say that I will be the first to do this. Do you think my parents said, okay, go off and ride horses every week? What's the benefit of this? What are you doing? What are you adding to your life? I have learned discipline. I have learned how to listen. I have learned how to build a relationship with something that allows me to know that if I don't get really good at this and really disciplined and change my mindset when I am doing a very dangerous activity, that's not something I grew up learning. I've only knew how to grow up and learn in a pressure pot situation. So I will say that at least I know that how when I continue to learn how to be an equestrian, I could say, well, I'm probably the first prize winner in Indo-Caribbean equestrian, and I think that being a first and knowing that how being a first can elevate you the same way that pageant culture is elevated in the Caribbean community. The first Caribbean Miss Universe, the first Guyanese Miss Universe. People love that. People love the trophy of it because it's a selling point to family members to make their children seem better than other children. There's always this invisible competition we see within our community and our culture that makes you feel like in order to be compared, your value goes down. And nobody wants to hear their parents comparing them to anything. We know that how our parents love to brag. We know that the people around us love to say, oh, this and that, yeah, they're doing this, they're doing that. That's very often I heard people that I thought supported me in my own community that look just like me say, I'm such a huge fan of this thing and I can't wait to see it. And they're consumers. And oftentimes I watch them ignore me and think that, oh, well, Sarita's just running off mean celebrities and that's it. Little did they know that same thing that they wanted to see, I was actually attending the movie premiere for or attending an event in honor of. Because I think that how when you don't listen to people and you think that what they're doing is false, it adds fuel. So for every single no, for every single why would you want to do that, use that as fuel to say, I'm going to do it and I'm going to be the best at it. And if anything, I might be the first at it. Use that as your fuel. Use that to light a fire under your ass to prove to everybody that you didn't need anybody else except for your own self and determination to do a better job in this world.
Bringing the conversation full circle, from your experience and how you talked about having so many people overlook you, even in our own community, and they will support this over here or support that, and not even putting you on the measuring stick as being good enough to do that or good enough to be in that room. How do you feel that it has equipped you and it continues to motivate you and inspire you to do even greater things, which you're doing and will continue to do?
I think that it was a part of, I didn't have to have a certain amount of followers. I didn't maybe even have to have a certain type of job in order to know that I found my community. I am the least Guyanese person you probably know. I am not, you're probably like, why is this girl even on here? At the end of the day, I'm a Guyanese woman, but I'm fortunate enough that I have met many Guyanese women who operate and embrace themselves through life exactly how I do. They might be in different industries, but they also prioritize their mental health. They move with peace and tranquility versus chaos and calamity. They know and have grown and accepted that while my upbringing was not the best situation, I have grown and healed from it. I might enjoy some soca music from time to time and some chutney and drink some rum and, do all this stuff and knock drum, whatever. I could do that. But at the end of the day, I would not be authentic to that because it doesn't mean that I don't love my culture. It means that I love myself too much to know that how while parts of that come with repercussions. So many people in our community get judged for the things that they are celebrating. I have watched many young girls in our community say, oh, she's so shy, she's so this, she's so that. But when she hears our music and she wants to get up and dance, oh, look how lala she is. look how, and there is contradictory. And I will let them know that there are people out there that you can be Guyanese, 100% Guyanese. I am 100% Guyanese, but I am not every type of Guyanese, and I can be my own individual outside of that. And I came to find that there are people that I mentor. There are people who don't even live in New York that said, wow, I actually feel the same way. I don't like, Tasa music. I don't like, doing these things, but it doesn't mean I'm less Guyanese. It's the same way that how in many, many cultures, especially in African-American culture, in Asian cultures, in even people who are Caucasian, there are different types of people you will find within those communities. Guyanese culture is one of them. You don't have to be the stereotype in order to represent ourselves. It does not mean that you talk like a white woman or you represent yourself as white facing. When I leave this house, I am Guyanese. I can't change my color. I can't change my hair. I can't change my natural features. But when someone asks me who I am, I say that I'm Indo-Caribbean and I'm proud of it. What is Indo-Caribbean? And then it goes into them knowing a little bit more about me and my people.
I love it. Listen, this conversation has been very meaningful, very in-depth. I think for the people who will watch this, people who will listen to it, they will grow and evolve as an even better person because they've had the opportunity to just listen to you in your journey and how you've grown. For those who want to connect with you and continue to follow what you're doing, how can they connect with you?
The easiest way to connect with me is on social media at Sarita Nauth. It's Sarita Nauth. That is the best way to follow me and support my work. But know that how I will continue to use my efforts and sort of my work in the community and in the entertainment industry to continue to best represent our people. So shoot me a DM, let me know if you have any questions, if you want me to expand on anything. I think that how it's so important to me to use my social media in that way. So you can follow me on Instagram. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I appreciate you sharing your time and your wisdom with us. For those of you who have watched this episode, listened to it, I know that you guys have grown. I know that you've evolved because I certainly have just from listening to her. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up while you're down there in the comments. Please make sure you click the links and connect with Sarita and all that she's doing because she's doing really amazing things. She's representing our people very well. And most of all, she's evolving to an even better person. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. Go out and have yourself a phenomenal day. Peace.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and hit that notification bell.